safer world is possible, and together we can and will make it happen. Thank you.
When you show up in community, you find that group that makes you feel like home, but oftentimes you also find yourself again.
It's 3 minutes after 10. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC, and you have to talk about it. There are moments when interventions in the public space are so vile and so grim and so gross and potentially so indicative of much deeper and broader malaises that you have to talk about it. Starving idiots of oxygen, denying attention-seeking superannuated toddlers that the air of publicity is tempting. It is, of course, attractive. But if you do not call it out, ever, if you do not dedicate proper attention to proper description, then it continues. I will be surprised if Jeremy Clarkson faces any meaningful censure for what he did in the Sun newspaper on Saturday. I will be deeply surprised for a number of reasons, and my not negligible knowledge of how this industry works maybe have helped to people on the outside. The main reason why I don't think he'll face censure is because it would involve admitting a mistake, and managements hate nothing more than admitting a mistake. If you drop an enormous clanger, they're much happier to see your contract roll to an undignified end, possibly even suggest that you stop filing your column a couple of months before the contract ends. But the actual axe, the falling of the actual guillotine, is an admission of epic wrongdoing on the part of whoever it was that allowed that column to be printed, or whoever commissioned that column in the first place. When Katie Hopkins wrote her disgusting column about people trying to cross the English Channel, the editorial staff at The Sun were adamant that no one had actually seen it, that it had somehow managed to reach the light of day unchecked. For what it's worth, knowing some of the people involved and some of the processes concerned, I actually believe them. But it doesn't matter, does it? Because they still didn't get rid of her immediately after the column appeared. And Nigel Farage's disgusting comments about, well, it's so hard to remember what disgusting comments it was that temporarily halted his career in toxic attention seeking, which continues, I think, on an obscure television channel. Again, you know, the move is bold when a management actually says enough is enough. We don't want your witterings anymore. That involves some element, not a massive element, but some element of mea culpa. And of course, you saw the editor of The Sun, again, someone I used to know quite well. As you saw the editor of The Sun on BBC One yesterday morning, this is what I found most incredible, oddly, about the whole affair, is that Laura Kuenssberg, the former political editor of the entire BBC, which is the only public broadcaster we have in this country, everything else is owned. The BBC is yours and mine and all of ours. She had the opportunity to ask Rupert Murdoch's editor what the hell was going on when Rupert Murdoch's editor decided to print that column by Jeremy Clarkson, and she didn't mention it at all. I genuinely, out of all of this, and this is me, you'll have to indulge me for 10 seconds. This is me being a little bit in-house, if you like, being a little bit trade, a little bit job. I cannot believe that. I can't even sit here and speculate confidently on how the hell that happened. Whether or not there was a nod and a wink before the programme started, and Victoria said, oh, I won't, well, listen, if you're going to ask me about that, then I'd rather not do the programme. And instead of saying, all right, then, bye-bye, don't let the door hit you on the way out, they said, oh, that's fine, just come in and say, I mean, it's cosy keeping access to a political class that has been bought and sold 100 times over by people like Rupert Murdoch is, you know, probably necessary if you want to end up in a job like that on the BBC. But I, for as long as I live, will never be able to understand how anyone who dares to call themselves a journalist had the actual editor of a newspaper that has just plumbed a new depth. A new depth. How many times have I asked you lately, what do you call it once you've scraped away the bottom of the barrel? What's below that? Well, Jeremy Clarkson, frankly. And for the BBC, the Tribune of the People, the only broadcaster that is not owned by somebody like Rupert Murdoch, to duck that opportunity, to shirk that responsibility, to be derelict of that duty was disgusting. But nowhere near as bad, of course, in the first instance as allowing it to be published in the first place. So why? How? What? Okay. 62-year-old man lies awake at night in bed dreaming about Meghan Markle being made to parade naked through the streets of every town in Britain while the crowds chant shame and throw lumps of excrement at her. Don't waste tenpence spewing some nonsense about Game of Thrones. If you're trying to defend this, it's because you like it. It's got nothing to do with Game of Thrones. You might need to dress up your own despicable character in television program shaped clothes, but I'm afraid it doesn't fool me or wash with me for a moment. So put your phone down if you're thinking of wasting tenpence claiming this is some sort of meta reference to a swords and sorcery program. You know that it isn't, because he concluded everyone who's my age thinks the same way. Anyone reaching for the Game of Thrones excuse this morning clearly does think the same way, but perhaps we should be thankful for this. They're still too ashamed to say so in public. Clarkson isn't. He's one of the highest paid commentators in this country. If you chuck in his TV work with Amazon, he may well be the highest paid journalist in the history of British journalism, which is why he won't be that bothered by this. He certainly won't be facing any jeopardy, any career threat. He will not, like many of us, be wondering if the axe actually falls, how long will I survive for? He's home and dry. He's over the line. He's made up for life. He's also upset his own daughter, who was absolutely adamant. In fact, she stated, "I want to make it very clear that I stand against everything my dad said about Meghan Markle, and I remain standing in support of those who are targeted with online hatred." Again, a neat little observation for you. Absolutely hilarious. Not in a good way, that the kind of people who are adamant that unconscious bias training, unconscious racial bias training is absolutely unnecessary and a load of old woke nonsense are precisely the same people who don't see the fat vein of misogynoir running through every single syllable of Jeremy Clarkson's foul splutterings. And he's managed uniquely, perhaps, to unite almost all corners of the country. Everybody from, right-on comedians right through to former Murdoch editors uniting in their disgust and their condemnation of this intervention. Nimco Ali, the chief executive of the Five Foundation, saying a young black woman opens up about her struggle with suicidal thoughts as a result of the abuse she got from the media, and this is how some men in the media.
Hello and a warm welcome to Sussexful. I'm your host, Emma. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Today we're looking at how James O'Brien slammed Jeremy Clarkson over his vile words about Meghan Markle, exposing the toxic bond between the royal family and the British press. Clarkson's comments were already public before the Sun editor Victoria Newton appeared on Laura Quensberg's show, yet no accountability was raised, despite Clarkson's history of violence and racist remarks, like the 2015 Top Gear incident. As Maya Angelou said, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. The media's protection of Clarkson and continued attacks on Meghan highlight the monarchy's toxic pact with tabloids, a system that destroyed Princess Diana and now targets Meghan through deep-seated misogynoir. So, Camilla dining with Clarkson and Piers Morgan, and the Wales' ties to journalist Camilla Tominey, well, it really reveals just how intertwined the palace is with the press. Clarkson's cruelty isn't humor, it's bullying, and any father should be ashamed to speak that way about another woman. Shame on the royal family for allowing this abuse to continue. Harry and Meghan have told the truth, and their Netflix series laid bare the heartbreaking reality behind the crown's fragile facade. The recent comments made by Jeremy Clarkson about Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, have rightfully sparked outrage and condemnation across the United Kingdom and beyond. Clarkson, known for his abrasive and often controversial persona, has once again revealed the depths of his misogyny and lack of empathy. His vile words about wishing to see the Duchess publicly humiliated are not only deeply disrespectful, but they also speak to a larger pattern of abuse and vilification that Meghan has faced since joining the royal family. As James O'Brien aptly pointed out, this is not the first time Clarkson has displayed such deplorable behavior, referencing the 2015 incident where he physically assaulted a Top Gear producer. The fact that the Sun newspaper chose to publish Clarkson's latest tirade is a further indictment of the toxic relationship between the royal family and the British media. It is clear that the Crown actively encourages this corrosive dynamic, with rival family members competing to ensure the tabloids get their front-page story, all at the expense of the women who marry into the family. It is concerning that Clarkson's comments about the Duchess of Sussex were already in the public domain before the Sun editor Victoria Newton appeared on Laura Quensberg's Sunday program. Even more troubling is the fact that Newton did not address or query Clarkson's vile remarks during the interview. This suggests a dereliction of her editorial duty, as she seemingly overlooked the opportunity to address the toxic and abusive relationship between the royal family and the mainstream press. Jeremy Clarkson's troubling history of misconduct has long been an open secret in the industry. The 2015 incident where he punched a Top Gear producer and used a racial slur was a clear indicator of his troubling behavior. As the late Maya Angelou once wisely said, "When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time." Clarkson's actions have repeatedly shown that he holds harmful biases and a penchant for abusive conduct. It is deeply concerning that the media continues to platform and amplify the views of someone with such a well-documented track record of problematic behavior. The Crown actively encourages this toxic relationship between the royals and the mainstream press, a relationship that has particularly impacted the women who marry into the royal family. Princess Diana and Meghan Markle have both felt the brunt of this abusive dynamic, where rival family members essentially compete to ensure the tabloids get their salacious front-page stories, all under the understanding that the royals have no right to privacy. This misogynistic and relentless coverage from the press has been devastating, and it speaks to the fragility of the Crown that any challenge to this status quo immediately results in the evaporation of any supposed loyalty to the monarchy. The toxic nature of this relationship is enabled by the very institution that should be protecting its members, and the treatment of both Diana and Meghan has been nothing short of disgraceful. The toxic relationship between the royal family and the press means that any sense of loyalty to the Crown immediately evaporates the moment a family member dares to challenge the status quo. This fragility of the Crown is, well, especially clear when it comes to the treatment of the women who marry into the family, as the misogynoir that's honestly just everywhere in the tabloid press inevitably leads to a disastrous outcome, like we saw with Princess Diana. The fact that folks like Jeremy Clarkson, with a well-documented history of offensive behavior, are still given platforms to spew their vile views about the Duchess of Sussex really speaks volumes about the priorities of the royal institution and its enablers in the media. Harry and Meghan's documentary has shone a much-needed light on this toxic, abusive relationship, and, it's high time the Crown acknowledges the harm it's caused and takes meaningful steps to reform the system that has allowed this cycle of mistreatment to continue. Camilla's connections to Jeremy Clarkson and Piers Morgan, now that's something to ponder. Her lunch with this controversial duo speaks volumes about the royal family's cozy relationship with the tabloid press. It's a testament, really, to the Crown's calculated strategy of cozying up to certain media figures, even those known for their vitriolic commentary, in exchange for favorable coverage. This tactic has long been employed to keep the royals' dirty laundry out of the public eye, at the expense of privacy and dignity. Camilla's willingness to break bread with Clarkson and Morgan, both of whom have made careers out of peddling toxic narratives, particularly about women in the royal family, underscores the lengths the royals will go to maintain their grip on the media landscape. It's a disturbing glimpse into the power dynamics at play, where the Crown sacrifices principles for the sake of favorable publicity. Now, let's talk about Kate and William's press connections. Their close relationship with Camilla Tominey of The Telegraph speaks volumes about their approach to managing the press. Tominey's regular access to the couple and their circle suggests an arrangement that allows the royals to shape their media coverage and narratives to their advantage. This revolving door between the palace and certain favored journalists highlights the quid pro quo nature of the royal family's dealings with the tabloid press, a system that Meghan and Harry have rightly criticized as toxic and abusive. While the future king and queen consort may find this cozy relationship with the media useful, it ultimately comes at the expense of transparency and the public's right to an independent, critical press. It's refreshing, isn't it, to see that Harry and Meghan have been consistently honest about their experiences within the royal family. Rather than engaging in empty platitudes or self-serving narratives, they have courageously shared the truth of the toxic environment they faced, particularly the systemic misogyny and racism that permeated the institution. Their willingness to speak out, despite the intense scrutiny and backlash, demonstrates their integrity and commitment to transparency. While some may seek to discredit or diminish their accounts, the reality is that Harry and Meghan's experiences align with the well-documented history of the royal family's fraught relationship with the media and the disproportionate impact on women who marry into the institution. Their honesty stands in stark contrast to the royal family's reluctance to address these issues, further underscoring the importance of their voice and the need for meaningful change. Clarkson's behavior in his recent comments about the Duchess of Sussex is nothing short of disgraceful. He should be utterly ashamed of himself for resorting to such vile and abusive language. The fact that the royal family has allowed this kind of bullying to carry on is absolutely disgusting. They have a responsibility to condemn this type of behavior, yet they seem unwilling to hold Clarkson accountable. It is a damning indictment of the toxic relationship between the royals and the mainstream press, as Prince Harry has rightly pointed out. Clarkson is simply a man who has made a fortune from being nasty, hiding behind the guise of humor. Any decent person, especially a father, should be appalled by his actions. The royal family's complicity in allowing this to continue is equally disturbing and speaks volumes about the fragility of the crown. Enough is enough. It is time for real accountability and an end to this culture of cruelty.